But when we kind of get out of the physical body, we go into that unity state, that I am you, you are me, I am you, you are me. We are all the same. And so it's really the subtle practices that I think are the most transformative.
Welcome to the world of energy, where science meets spirit. Ancient wisdom merges with cutting-edge knowledge, and the possibilities for a healthier, happier you are endless. I'm Lauren Walker.
And I'm Blaine Wilkes. This is Energy Works, your portal into the incredible world of energy medicine. Whether you're a seasoned energy practitioner seeking to deepen your knowledge, or someone new to the concept of energy medicine, this podcast was created for you. Together, we unravel the intricate threads of energy that weave through our lives, revealing practical insights, stories, and actionable tools you can start using right away.
Join us on this captivating journey through the world of energy, right here, and learn how energy works. Hi, everybody. Lauren here. Just wanted to check in with you all and see how much you loved the podcast that I just did with New York Times bestselling author Sebastian Junger. We released it on September 9th on our podcast channel, Energy Works, and on our YouTube channel as well. And I hope you loved it as much as we both obviously loved speaking to each other. We could have talked for hours and hours. And in fact, we did. Over the 2 days of our meeting, we spent hours talking about everything under the sun. And then we sat down and did this podcast. And then the podcast was over, but Sebastian wasn't done yet. And so we sat with the camera running for another half hour talking about unpacking some of the really spicy stuff from the interview, because we thought, well, we're not on camera anymore, so what do we just want to talk about? And we both really wanted to talk about spirit and spirituality and what that means, and is it just a word? He very clearly talks about his feelings of God in the podcast, but we went a little bit deeper here. So if you want to hear this backstage, behind the scenes, will never be released anywhere video, then drop us your email and we will send you access to that video. Drop your email at learn.emyoga.net/spirit. You will find this video there, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. It was so much fun talking to Sebastian. We'll definitely have him on the podcast again, but will we get this behind the scenes footage again? I doubt it. So check it out now while you still can. Hi, everybody. Lauren here. Welcome back to another episode of Energy Works. And I'm here with Blaine, and we're going to talk a little bit about subtle energy. These are energies that cannot be measured by scientific equipment at this time. And it's interesting because the subtle energies have a profound impact on our bodies, minds, and in our lives. And yet they're kind of given a bit of short shrift or dismissed, certainly dismissed by the kind of Western medical establishment. Usually, if you're trying to get healthy and live long, the two things that everybody tells you and that we all know now, and that there's a zillion podcasts about how is diet and exercise. So if you want to live forever and be really healthy, the two things you're going to hear about is diet and exercise. And those will run the gamut. The diet conversations, they'll go all the way from raw vegan all the way up to raw omnivore and everything in between. And the information on exercise will similarly be from low impact, 20 minutes a day, all the way up to doing the Ironman and everything in between. And so those are kind of what we are told are the most important things to stay healthy and to get healthy. Would you agree with that, Blaine?
100%.
As someone who's done Iron Women's.
End of question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I've played in that entire spectrum.
Yeah, exactly. The diet spectrum, the physical spectrum, all of it. Yeah. Yeah. So we hear a lot about that, and there's tons of information out there, and it's not all that easy to sift through, actually. And we might tackle some of that as we go along, because, again, not to put you on the spot, Blaine, but I know you have a lot of experience in kind of sifting through the conflicting advice coming through about diet and about exercise.
Yeah, I do. And, directly on this topic of subtle energy, sometimes when I'm working with clients on the energy of food in the sense of when you eat something, how do you feel later? And many people can think of an experience maybe in their life. Well, I'll be a little gender normative here, so forgive me. But maybe, the woman and her husband, a man, go out to dinner, and the woman eats a fresh salad full of lots of antioxidants and full of fiber and water and a lot of micronutrients, and the man eats a big cheeseburger and fries. And then they get up from the table, and the woman's like, "Oh my God, I feel great. Let's go hike." And the man's like, I need to go take a nap. And so their energy level is completely different, even if they sat down to eat at the same level when they got up to eat. That's subtle energy, right? That's, shifts that are happening even because of food. And so it does all intertwine and overlap, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that's a great example. And, if you do, it's sort of kind of another thing that we talk about. Like if you take a yoga class and you're tired afterwards, something's not right with your energy. And if you eat a meal and you're exhausted afterwards, something's not right with your energy. It could also be what you ate, but it could be that your energies aren't able to integrate what you ate. And we have some techniques for that, and we'll share them down the road.
But, we sure do.
Exactly. But I kind of want to talk about today the subtle energies in the yoga world, because those are more and more kind of escaping the yoga world gratefully and gracefully, because they are so powerful. And if you study traditional yoga, you may or you may not know that the asana practice, the physical practice that is kind of the most wide known thing about yoga, right? Downward facing dog. Now you see that in magazines, TV shows, it's all over the place. You see yoga everywhere. So that's the physical practice. But what that is meant to do is the physical practice gets the physical container, your body, ready to sit in relative stillness for the more subtle practices, the next one being the breathing practices. It's called pranayama, and it's all these myriad of techniques of working with your breath, which is the bridge really between the conscious and unconscious in the body. And that really is to get the container and the mind and all of the energies of the body ready for meditation, which is even more stillness. In the breathing practices, you might be moving your arms, you're certainly moving your body with these deep, breaths, and you'll feel physical movement. When you move into meditation, now you're really in stillness. Most of the time, your eyes aren't even open. And that is to prepare you for the next step, which is the sort of dissolution of self into what is called samadhi or bliss, where you're not aware, you are, to kind of paraphrase or paraquote Joe Dispenza, you are no mind, no body, no being, no here, no time, no space. You are just dissolved into source. And that really is the path of the traditional yoga practice. So the physical is not the least important, because it's also very important, but it is of equal footing of importance with the subtler, quieting practices of the breathing and then of the meditation and then beyond that. And so it's just interesting that in the world, if you want to live forever, and you want to be really healthy, well, you're going to exercise. So go walking every day or running every day or hiking or swimming, or do something every day. Move your body. And when they say move your body, they're like, move your body, big movements, get big, get small, get big, get small. And that's a big thing. And then the nutrition piece, it's, eating all the different colors of fruits and vegetables, and eating more fruits and vegetables, and eating organic if you can, and eating more fiber, all of those things. Those are big things. And now we're talking about what are the effects to your health, body, mind, and spirit, of doing these more subtle practices.
Yeah, when I studied yoga in India, it was an advanced yoga training. And so I'll say that it wasn't a beginner yoga training. It was for people who'd already been through at least a 200-hour yoga teacher training already and learned more of the, I guess, the non-subtle, more of the physical practice aspects of yoga. And then I think it's somewhat fair to say, if you're following, we'll call it a traditional yoga path, the more advanced you get, the less you're moving. The more you are in meditation, the more you are doing breath work, the more you're really spending your time that you're devoting to your practice of yoga in stillness, because that's the juice. That is when we really start to see soul, or your deep self, that's not just your physical body, but the real you, the who you are. Not to dive too much into ego, but the dissolving of the ego, because our physical body is one of the ways in which we kind of define our individuality. I am Blaine. I look like this. I am this tall. I look like my mom and my dad. I have this, you look like that is Lauren. That is not Blaine. You can tell who is who, part of by our physical body. And so the physical body is this constant reminder of separation. But when we kind of get out of the physical body, we go into that unity state, that I am you, you are me, I am you, you are me, we are all the same. And so it's really the subtle practices that I think are the most transformative.
I love that. And I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I'm not laughing at the profundity of what you're saying. I'm laughing at that I just went into I'm the walrus in my head, right? And of course, the Beatles really studied this kind of work and did transcendental meditation with a guru in India. And so to come up with songs like I am you and you are me and we are three and we are all together. I mean, that is... I really just destroyed that song. I apologize to the four of you, but you get my point. Is right. They knew that we are all connected. But I want to pull it back actually from that subtle yogic. We're connected, dissolving the ego, beautiful things. I love that. But like, what about if I don't care about any of that? Still, the power of the breathing practices and of meditation transcends your desires or not desires to be on a spiritual path and to be dissolving the ego and to understand all of these precepts. There are massive beneficial biological and physiological benefits from simply doing breathing practices and simply doing meditation. Cascades of the beneficial chemicals that can literally rewire the body. If you sit down and do some, at the very basic level, just some deep diaphragmatic breathing, slowing your breathing down. You don't even have to study what this, what that, how do I, just, there it is. You have the capacity right now to change some of the physiological and biological patterns in the body. So this really transcends any kind of spiritual path that you're on. This is why books like James Nestor's Breath is still a New York Times bestseller. It is still on the bestseller list. It has sold millions of copies. It is changing people's lives. And there's very little that he weaves into that book about, gurus or yoga. Like, it's not about that at all. It's about nose breathing versus mouth breathing and the unbelievable biological detriments of shallow mouth breathing, which is how most people, if you walk through the grocery store, I challenge you to look around and see most people are mouth breathing and shallow. And by shallow, I mean, you can see the upper chest kind of just moving in and out in little puffs because they're just breathing these little shallow puffs of breath. And we got to get James Nestor on this podcast at some point because he's just brilliant in what he's done. And he sort of did a supersize me. He did a challenge with him and a friend of his. A friend, maybe not such a friend anymore to like rope him into this challenge, but they challenged themselves to only mouth breathe for, do you remember how long they did that for, Blaine?
No, I read that book during the pandemic. It's been too long for me to remember.
It was significant though. It was, a week or two, might have even been a whole month. And by the end of that time, when they were only mouth breathing all day long, all night long, and they used these different things to like make sure that they were only mouth breathing, their health had just plummeted. It was horrible. They were just, one of them, I think his friend was like literally starting to lose his mind, like kind of going crazy, like, but physiologically too, like they couldn't run anymore. They couldn't walk, like they just were bottoming out. So this is not about transcending the heights of spiritual awareness. This is about right here, right now. You want to live long and prosper? Breathe and meditate.
Yes. Yes. And the resistance to meditation is so huge. And it's the unexplainable, right? It's one of the things that is so hard to explain when someone says, meditation changed my life. Well, how? Well, I don't know how to explain it, but it did. And it does. It absolutely does. Not to make this a whole thing about meditation, but I think what people have a hard time saying is that we're pulled around so much by our urges and our thoughts and our emotions, and we're just kind of getting like yanked all over the place. Our addictions, our habitual patterns of reactions, and all of that sort of thing. And that when you get quiet, you start to disentangle that. And you start to learn, because meditation is not about not having thoughts. That's a big misconception. We're not going to not have thoughts. We're a human with a human brain that produces thoughts. That's what the organ does. It's like we can't just turn an organ off like that. But what we can do is practice having a thought and letting it go and coming back to the breath, and having a thought and letting it go and coming back to the breath. And that's the magic of meditation, that moment that you realize you're having a thought while you're meditating, and you choose, you exercise choice. I'm not running down that thought road. I'm going to let it go. And I'm going to, return to the breath, which is an anchor. You can use other anchors besides the breath. But that constant repetition of really being the boss instead of letting your thoughts be the boss and yank you all over the place is where you start to see less emotionality. I mean, my students, I have children of my adult women students who say it's very common for me to hear this. My mom is so different now. She used to fly off the handle. She used to freak, and she doesn't at all. She's really centered and calm now. Now being after she started a meditation practice. And that is the part that is the hard to explain, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm different now. It's hard to explain how I'm different. But it is that just coming back to quiet, coming back to quiet, coming back to quiet. And just like any other pattern in the body, the more you start to reinforce your pattern of having choice, do I want to react or do I not want to react? I have choice because there's, I don't even know whose quote it is, but between stimulus and response, there's a little moment in there. And so the more that you can lean into that moment between stimulus and response, your time sitting on the metaphorical meditation cushion is practicing and rehearsing, elongating that time.
That's a really beautiful description of it. And I think too, one of the benefits is, you talked about coming back to the silence, but I also think, and maybe even, at least in my interpretation, more powerful is coming back to the choice. Because when you talk about how it changes you, we know that every emotion that we experience comes with a cascade of chemicals through the body. And those are either stress chemicals or healing and joyful chemicals. And we have habits of the mind. And so the mind habituates to your thinking patterns. Oh, nothing ever works out for me. Oh, that guy's a jerk. Oh, that lady's a jerk. Or that whole store is jerky. I'm never going back to that store that was so obnoxious to me. And now I'm going to take that and I'm going to go to the next store. And I'm like, oh my God, why are all these people that are doing all this? Why are there so many people in my town? Right? And that is creating a cascade of stress chemicals through the body that literally is breaking the body down. And so when you start to sit in meditation and you start to see the repetition of those thought patterns, then you can, in that gap that you talked about, you can make the choice. I don't want to have that thought. I want to have a different thought, a thought that then is going to fill me with these uplifting chemicals, endorphins that are going to make me feel good, but not only feel good, that are going to help my body tissues to heal instead of to degenerate. And I think another issue that a lot of people have when they think about meditation, and you talked about this briefly too, is like, I have to sit still. And we don't want to sit still. It kind of brings us back to like being in school and like you get in trouble if you kind of got up from your chair when you were a kid and you had like so much energy and now you have to sit still. And it's that same thing. I don't want to sit still. I want to go outside for a walk, or I've got dishes to do or whatever. I don't want to sit still. It's a waste of time. What's going on? I don't want to sit still. I can think thoughts doing any da. And so that if you can flip that into, you get to have this time where you are cultivating a sense of peace and contentment, then it flips it from being this thing that you have to do and you have to stop doing all of these other things to you get to spend this time being in joy, being in gratitude, being in just a peaceful, calm state. And that then starts to carry over into the rest of your life as well.
Yeah, and we're putting this conversation under the umbrella of diet and exercise and health because what we're calling the subtle energies is it's hard for a machine to measure in a way that we can get our blood drawn and we can have our blood pressure taken and we can get on a scale. And, there's so many ways that we have other indices of what, we would call health, the normal range of health. And we just don't have that for these subtle energies, but they're arguably as important, if not more important, because you can be the we'll call it American standard of normal, good health, but not be healthy at all. And the way that your subtle energies, all the things we talk about here, your patterns of energies, your thoughts patterns, the way that your organs are really being driven by like the pulses and the vibration and the cellular communication and all of these things that are really making you healthy. And our podcast is called Energy Works. That's really the crux of everything that we're talking about here, which is why we wanted to devote just a little bit of a discussion around this, because we have our own language, I think, some, energy medicine yoga, and those of us who work with energy, and those of us from the lineage of Donna Eden and energy, and maybe Chinese medicine and meridians. Those of us in this movement, I will call it, of looking at your body in a different way. So as we're going through the journey of this podcast together, which is very, very new, that Lauren and I have started, so we're all speaking the same language.
Yeah, and I think too, that language, I'm glad that you brought up, that it is a language and we have a specific vocabulary, because I think it exists obviously it exists outside of that, but we need a way to talk about it and a way to frame it. And when I was talking with Donna and David about their book and about what is happening with the subtle energies in the body when you're using these very unsubtle movements to wake those up, which is such a huge part of the Eden method and energy medicine yoga, is using these kind of big gestures to wake up these and communicate with these more subtle energies. And so that language is, we're all talking the same thing. We're all on the same page. I mean, we're literally, we call them our mothership, right? But then when we go back and we think about the interview that I did with Sebastian Junger, I mean, this is so out of his wheelhouse. His dad was a physicist, and he talks about this all the time, that he hated anyone using the word energy outside of a physics definition, which is energy is the capacity to do work. And he can't explain in any kind of language what happened to him when he had his near-death experience, what happened to him when his father came to him and that pit opened up to the left of him and called him in. Now, in our world, that's really easy. There's kind of an obviousness and a clarity to what was going on. We understand that. But for him in his world, there's no explanation for that. There's no belief system for what happened. And so to be able to understand that these subtle energies are animating us, and that things like that, voices from beyond, let's just say, and we can have some other really fun conversations about that in a future episode. But, these things, they're happening. We understand them. They're speaking in the language of subtle energies, and they're confounding to people that don't have the grasp or the awareness that these subtle energies are real and incredibly powerful, even though they can't yet be measured by our modern scientific equipment. And hopefully in years to come that they will be able to be, but the fact that they're not able to be measured doesn't mean that they are any less real or any less valid. And when I think back to, people that refute these things by saying they're not scientifically proven and da-da-da-da-da, there's so much that science itself still doesn't know. And I always go back to this one, Blaine, you've heard me say this a million times. Science still doesn't know how a cell in utero, in a fetus, differentiates and becomes an eyeball cell or a liver cell or a hair cell. And I'm thinking, that seems pretty basic to me, like how we become human. And really, there's no scientific explanation for that. And there isn't. And so then it's sort of like, okay, well, that must be some subtle energy. And again, we could talk more about that. And maybe we'll get a morphic field scientist on at some point to share with us how that works in the subtle realm.
Yeah, I think it does help, and we'll wrap this up in a moment, but to bring yourself, all of us, back to that point. I mean, gravity cannot be explained. Like, scientists understand that there is gravity. They understand if I hold my phone and I let it go, it will fall to the ground, right? They understand that. But exactly what is happening to make that happen cannot be explained, or all the things we cannot see, microwaves, radio waves, or, now science can start to explain those, but how many waves are out there that we don't even know about? Or even on the radio, just because you can't tune into that station doesn't mean it does not exist. Someone else can hear it. And so I think it's always a good reminder that there's all kinds of things that we cannot see, that we do not know, some of which we know about. We don't know what we don't know. And so just this basic understanding that there's a lot happening that we can't see, and kind of opening our hearts and minds to the fact that just because we can't hear it, see it, or read about it in a textbook doesn't mean that it does not exist. And so I feel like we can wrap there.
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing before we do, because I think that was really powerful what you said. And I want to go back to the massive documentable effects that these subtle practices have. So even if you can't say why your phone drops if you let it go, you can see the effects because your phone will have broken, especially if it goes from a long distance onto a hard surface. So, right, you don't have to know why, but you know the outcome. And so doing these more subtle practices, and pranayama, or the breathing practices, aren't even really considered that subtle at this point. Certainly meditation is. But even Western medicine prescribes meditation practices. And a lot of times there are groups and things that you can have insurance pay for to go study and learn how to meditate, because they have seen the incredible effects. Stress levels go down, disease patterns go down, they get erased, they get reversed. So, diet and exercise, breathing and meditation. If you want to really start to get a handle on the things that are going to affect your health and your health span, not just your living long, but living long and living healthy. And I might even flip it and say meditation and pranayama first, then I might add diet, and then at the end I would add exercise. And the physical body does need to move as much as it can, if it can. But if it can't, if you have any limitations to the physical movements of the body, you can still have an incredible amount of health and vitality, life, and contentment. And these subtler practices can help you get there. So I think I'm going to leave those breadcrumbs there, and we can wrap up today. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And let's just all do this together. Take a deep, deep breath in the nose. And exhale as long as you can out the mouth. Keep exhaling. More. Take another deep inhale in the nose. And thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your exhaling, inhaling day. Thanks for joining us.
Alrighty, energy fans, that's a wrap on another positively charged episode of Energy Works. Lauren, this is the part where we get to use our energy puns.
It's been electrifying, hasn't it, Blaine? We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have.
If you're feeling amped up and you want to keep your energy flowing, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform.
And we'd love to hear from you, so please take a moment to leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to deliver content that resonates, so light up our inbox.
and spark a conversation with your friends to tell them about us. And we'll see you next time on Energy Works.